Houston, our instruments are showing that we have a incoming message from deep space. Repeat, Houston, we have an incoming message from deep space. Houston, we'll begin playing message now. Houston, we're going to try and translate that up here. Hold for translation. Translation complete. We'll begin playing message now.
Hey, it's me, Melissa.
What do you do when the aliens invade? Take a shot of MK Ultra and watch Melissa Jade. Put on your tinfoil hat and tune right in. We got that crime spree, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, a complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Aliens was on the sun or in Area 51. Time travels, unravels, haunted castles, cops are baffled, potential experimental thoughts that make you transcendental. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Crime sprees, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Pink Dagger, for being a member for 9 months. That is so awesome. Pink says, I have been listening to all of your coverage on the Leilani Simon trial and Delphi, and I just want to thank you so much for taking this. Oh, thanks, Pink. I have a lot of thoughts. Like, this is going to be, and I went a bit earlier because I know Duty Ron has a live at 8 o'clock. And it's a very serious topic, and I want to be able to send everyone over there and show support. And so, but I have so many thoughts regarding, and it's even more than what's on this title and thumbnail with everything now with the Menendez brothers. Okay. So we're going to get into kind of everything, mostly Delphi, because I'm catching up with that. And I have a lot of thoughts that I need to like talk to you guys about. Now with Delphi, I'm catching up, so I'm not going to be able to present to you guys. Like, I just kind of want to have a discussion for tonight's live, with what I've been catching up on, what I've heard, what you guys have heard, and just kind of bounce some thoughts around. I know Shay's going to be joining us on panel. Hi, my snot rocket. So yeah, we're doing a little bit of an earlier live. And I'm going to jump right into it. So let me pull up our missing child for tonight's live stream. Our missing child is Lauren Annette Pineda. She has been missing since October 24th, today, guys. So that's why I picked her. She has been missing today, out of Arlington County, Virginia. She is 14 years old. Lauren was last seen wearing a black crop top with black pants near Richmond Highway and 20th Street. She does have a medical condition that requires medication. Here's a zoomed up photo. She is so pretty, so young. So if you or anyone you know has information on Lauren's whereabouts, please call the Arlington County Police Department at 703-558-2222. Okay. Yay, Chloe Jade. I know, I just got home too. Hi, Natasha. Melanie. Okay, so what I've heard. Hi, Shay.
Hey, Melissa Jade.
We are, I don't even know where to start. I guess let's talk for a second about the Menendez brothers. So if you weren't over at Gavels and you weren't just watching, the Menendez brothers got approval to be resentenced, and essentially they're going to get out like within 30 to 45 days. Hi, Oki. And listen, Linda, listen, okay? And I have to contain myself here. I am not sitting strongly on one side or the other with this. And I think that's also kind of what makes me nervous, is I'm not used to not having an adamant feeling about something, if that makes sense. With this, I do sit somewhat in the middle, but I have to say, it is a scary time when people who have murdered their parents are getting released left and right. I will say that, because if every child who has sustained abuse, and when we're talking Gypsy, when we're talking the Menendez brothers, they were adults. They were legal adults. They all were. When we're talking about every child or every adult who has parents that have abused them, it's okay to murder. We would have a lot of murdered parents on our hands, guys. So I'm not sure how I'm feeling. I don't know what I feel. What are your thoughts, Shay?
I mean, I have similar feelings. I think age definitely should be considered in crimes. But I guess just with this, ah, I don't know, this one's really tough. I don't want to be insensitive, but I just feel like two wrongs don't make a right.
It doesn't, and I think that everything should be taken into factor. I think, see, this is hard. I'm scared. I'm scared with where things are heading. Now, I don't just lump everything into the Menendez brothers being, resentenced. I do have sympathy. I do struggle, but let's be real. They shot their parents in the face. They went outside, reloaded, and went back in. We're not talking, same thing with Gypsy, right? And then I look at Nick Godejohn, someone who struggles with autism, right? Who I feel like was very much taken advantage of. Brandon Dassey, same thing. Why? It's interesting to me which cases, which prisoners, murderers are getting that attention, and I'm concerned. I don't know. Like, hi Becky. I'm not against it. I don't know where I stand with it. I don't know, but I don't think Gypsy should have done 8.5 years and walked out. And it seems like she didn't learn a damn thing, honestly. So I'm scared. I'm honestly scared with where things are heading, because what does this mean? Essentially, that means I could go blow my parents' heads off, go tell you my life story and what they went through. If that's true, that is horrific. But there's a lot of victims out here, a lot. And we shouldn't justify it. It's a hard one. It's a hard one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's sad all around, like if that's truly what happened in their lives. But I get stuck back on the planning of the event of the parents and then the calls and the way they acted afterwards.
Exactly.
There's just more to the behavior, and I'm not a behavioral expert, but just those kind of signs that just kind of give me the side eye.
And I agree 100%. And that's what I meant by, like, all factors should be taken into play. And I do, Deets. I put it this way: the district attorney essentially just admitted, oh, we got a lot of pressure. We had a lot of calls, and so I couldn't keep up with it. So I decided to move it forward. That's concerning. Like, I don't know. Everything about it is concerning. But yes, Shay, I 100% agree. Was it a passion of the moment in the midst of being abused? You were fearful for your life, or were you both grown adults? And when I say that, I am aware that when you're dealing with long-term abuse like that, especially as a child, you can argue, hey, you could walk right out that door. But there have been victims of kidnapping where they will be walking out amongst you in the public and they will not feel like they could even ask for help, walk away. So I'm aware that happens, and I take that in as a factor. But this was methodical planning that went into this, and the behavior after the murders, the same way with Gypsy, right? And it makes you wonder, and so I don't know. I'm not one way, I'm not the other way, but I am concerned. That's the only way I can express it.
Yeah.
um Currently we are on verdict watch in the trial of Leilani Simon. Now, defense came up when it was time, we had the state rest, and defense came up and was like, you know what? We don't believe prosecution has met their burden of proof. We don't believe that they have proved beyond a reasonable doubt that malice murder occurred. And so we call no witnesses. We don't have a defense. Leilani gets on stand and it's like, nope, I am not going to testify. You know, like I've discussed this in full with my lawyers, and they did closing statements. And I've had this concern since day one, 2 years ago, that because of the condition of Quinton's partial remains, that they were not going to be able to prove what happened. And that's not prosecution's fault. And they definitely reiterated that during closing statements, is that that's not on us, that's on her. Nor do we have to really prove how this happened, but that it happened. And but I'm very much concerned, especially since they already released for today. They requested 11 copies of the indictment, and they're asking you to come back in tomorrow. Not saying it has to be a quick, no-brainer, but I'm very concerned that she's going to get off on the malice murder.
And I know you and I differ on this aspect. I disagree. I think that per the court's instruction, even the jury instruction, I think that they proved that. Leilani's interviews, where she put herself at the time, the cell phone, the fence or whatever, the fencing or whatever of the cell phones, everything, to me, it puts her as the person who did it. They didn't have to prove how it happened. So this is what I want to say though. And I totally understand, like, if you don't know how it happened and you can't have a cause, but here's the deal. If they can't charge on anything like this, then wouldn't that also then push other people who wanted to off someone to just dispose of them, because then they could never get charged for murder? I mean, it's like, it's kind of this damned if you do, damned if you don't. They got to try. I definitely think that the other two felony counts of murder are a lot more probable, but I am confident in malice murder because it took that one instant.
And I totally hear what you're saying, and I love being able to have the differing thoughts. My concern is, and one name change said, I agree, every child that unalives their parents can walk amongst the folks who would not even have considered such actions. Someone unalived my mother and niece in 2015. I am still pending a trial, and I am so sorry for what you've had to go through. And I can't imagine having to deal with the whole process of a trial, waiting that far out, not having those answers, not having that justice. So essentially you can't have your closure, and so name change said, would it be fair for the criminal to receive a reduced sentence because of his alleged abuse by his family? He unalived my mom and niece. Should it be okay to not serve a full life sentence? And I think that that's a great point. And I don't know, like, I don't think everything could get lumped in to just a yes or no. I don't think it's that easy. But that's the issue that I'm having right there, is what you're saying is, well, wait a second, I think the fact that Menendez is, and sorry, we're kind of bouncing, but I think that the fact that a lot of the family supports the boys, they mentioned that back at trial, referring to them as the boys. They're grown-ass men, but having their support definitely is a factor. But let's take an instance where they may not have had that support. Would they still be getting resentenced? I don't think so. But a lot of people are victims of abuse. Some abuse much worse than others. But if we are saying, okay, well, one rules out the other, we're screwed. We really are. But yes, with Leilani, the thing that I'm most concerned about is, I agree that all roads lead to Leilani. But if I was sitting on that jury, and I'm really trying to separate my emotions, okay? Did they prove she murdered him? I think they proved she discarded his body, abused his corpse, made false statements. I think they could have even proved
What other
his die
accident
of
though would
natural
it be?
causes. I don't know, but like that's not what it. I don't know, Shay. I have a bad pit in my stomach. I have a bad pit in my stomach, and I wish I didn't. There's going like all 12, like just 12 of us from the chat to the panel. Could we all agree on one thing? Anything? No. You know, what's the likelihood all 12 people are going to agree? You think they did? Through the circumstantial evidence they did. Me,
Yeah.
I see, and then Maria says no, they didn't prove it, and that's why I'm nervous, because all it takes is one. And the fact that they couldn't even, and when I say this, it's not their fault, I'm just saying they couldn't even tell us what they think happened, which again, not their fault, but I feel like that's going to be an issue. Is how can you say an accident didn't happen and she disposed his body and lied about it? Do you feel like they proved an accident couldn't have happened? That it was intentional to murder him versus I was up on a bunch of drugs and an accident occurred, and then do you feel strongly they proved malice murder specifically?
Yeah, they asked her multiple times if an accident occurred. No, no, no. They tested his brain matter for drugs. Not in there. He's too old for SIDS. He didn't have any concerning health issues. They even brought in the pediatrician. He was above 75 percentile. I really do think that they really cornered in that aspect. But I mean, it's up to the jurors. And yeah, I know we were having a hard time with those interviews, Melissa,
Yeah,
but I really feel like that those interviews are so telling and they get to
they
see all of
were.
it.
They were. I hope the jury heard it better than we were able to hear it. And I'm gonna pull up a poll. I'm gonna do a poll. But and I hear what you're saying as far as she had every opportunity. She had every opportunity to say, and she said it wasn't an accident. But I could play devil's advocate and say, yeah, she was standing on the ground of, I'm scared. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to get in trouble. So she's going to deny accident or not. She's going to deny because she's scared and she's not in the right state of mind. She's under the influence. She's this, she's that. Um,
She
I'm
said
not
she
saying that's
gets
how I feel.
anger.
This is what I'm scared is going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's take a poll.
I mean, I think the rebuttal of the prosecution today was really well done. It made me feel more confident and over the jury instructions personally. I'm still befuddled why her own lawyer called her a slut, but whatever.
Lord Farquaad doing the most, man.
Jeez, I was like, well, tell us how you really feel, man. I mean, shit.
I think he was trying to use that word as the prosecution being offensive. Essentially they're trying to just prove she's a slut. I think the female prosecutor did a really good job with her closing. Why do I keep saying closing statement? And she's like, it's 2024, we're not looking to slut shame, but the point is that she relied heavily on these men for her own self-confidence, and it plays into the whole motive. Not that we even have to prove motive, not that we even have to give you motive, but it is part of the motive, and I think she did really good.
I think that having several witnesses along with her Google search of the way she felt about Quentin was very telling. Um, I did find it interesting that the prosecution did not want to further reflect on the friend of Cody's that testified, Seance Lady,
Mm-hmm.
but she is memorable to me because I mean, she was memorable. I mean, she had a lot to say that her stuff aligned with what Diana and them were saying too. The Google search didn't lie either. I mean, there's other
That Google
factors
search
outside of
was
witnesses.
massive. It was massive. And I think right there, that Google search, and I was surprised they didn't mention it again, that Google search really helps, in my opinion. And if you guys don't remember what the Google search was, let me pull it up.
I
This
thought
was,
they pulled it up on screen during the closing, but I could be wrong. I was
I
kind of
could be
multitasking.
wrong because I really just listen while I'm at work, but
Me too.
if they did, I'm glad. But this was the Google search, which I think is critical in proving something was very, very wrong.
Was it Leilani's family there that we could see in the audience? I mean,
Mhm.
that was just weird. A lot of it was very odd to me.
Yep. You see, is it common for a mother to have resentment or even anger towards her child because of the father or another reason? I think it's very important. This right here, it's very reminiscent of Letitia, but it gives very scary insight into how she felt about Quinton.
Mhm.
I don't know. The only family I saw was Joe and Michael, and I only saw him twice. Yeah, BJ was at like every single one of her court appearances and hearings leading up, and I think it's massive that neither prosecution or defense, not that defense called any witnesses, but what do you think about defense turning around and saying, we don't think they met the burden? We're not even putting on a defense. What do you think? Do you think that was the best move, or do you think that was a bad move?
I mean, part of me thinks the way they state it kind of says itself and what their perspective is. Like, we don't have the burden, the state does, and I agree the state fully own their burden. But I don't know. I kind of feel like it was a missed opportunity. And I also, okay, this is just another thing that goes with that was like in the closing statements. Remember how he was like, I'm not going after Danny, but he's talking about Danny nonstop. It was just like I was expecting the defense to actually, put on a case and maybe go after Danny more. I know that they weren't doing a third party, but I think, expecting more of that reasonable doubt to be planted further.
Right.
That that's just my opinion on the matter.
I agree. Um, I think it's just really messed up. I think it's really messed up because how never really thought about it too much. Like, how does Danny go on after this, whether there's a conviction or not? That's really a heavy weight to carry, is you being used as reasonable doubt, that door opening, that maybe there was an accident. Danny dumped him off in the dumpster on the way to work. I heard him say that, I was like, wow. And I know that's his job, but like, I have no idea how that could impact Danny.
But then, okay, so say that's his theory, but then he had all of the evidence prior to the trial, knowing that full and well that trip didn't go by Azalea.
Right.
So I guess that just was kind of weird to me. Like I was expecting maybe him to have taken that path for him to have said that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
give me a little bit more reasonable doubt with that. And that's kind of where I got a little hung up on it. I was thinking a little bit more would come from that.
Right. Um, Chris said it got me rolling when prosecution called Craig Weston the emotional support drug dealer, and they did. They did refer to him as the emotional support drug dealer. You are right. Tess says
I am the drug dealer.
there are multiple trials we've seen that we don't know how the victims passed. However, it doesn't affect the guilty outcome, in my opinion, obviously. But guilty of what, Tess? The charges matter. What you're being charged with matters. You know what I mean? So it's not just guilty or not guilty. I'm specifically asking, right, like guilty of malice murder. And I know you're right as far as there are plenty of times. Hey, there's even been times where a body hasn't been recovered and they're still able to convict. I guess I'm nervous like with Casey Anthony, okay? I think if they, and I don't want them to go for a lesser charge, but I think with similar to Casey, if it was a lesser charge, the jury would have convicted, but without enough information, they weren't able to convict under those charges. And I'm so scared that's what's going to happen in this situation. And I don't know how, let me know in the chat whether you feel the defense turning around and saying, hey, they didn't meet their burden of proof. We call no witnesses. Was the right move? Or do you think that's going to screw them in the end? But ask yourself also, what could, I think that's really telling, because who would they have called? What, they couldn't prove Danny did anything, right? Because he didn't. So I think the only way they were able to get away with it was with cross-examining witnesses, putting in that little seed, and then not having to prove anything through witnesses.
I guess like this is just where I go back to is that Leilani herself, from the time they called the police out there, she gets herself caught up in her lies very quickly. And from the flock cameras, I know later on, just today, they brought up her not even going to get Paul's help. That was such a good point. I thought about it a long time ago, just never really kind of crossed my mind lately. But yeah, I mean, like if she was in like looking for her son, they exhausted all other options. You saw they did 700 canvases of a possible abduction. I think they definitely investigated this case to the best of their abilities. But from the flock cameras, see there, that's when Leilani's story started changing. And then it kept going from there. And you know me, I'm stuck on the damn shrimp pasta. She put herself
You
at
don't even want
Azalea.
to go.
Yeah, well, spaghetti's the different thing because she took Danny's story and said she made spaghetti. That bitch didn't make no spaghetti. That was Danny, but whatever. The shrimp pasta, she puts herself there throwing it away. So she has like all of this recollection up until the very last interview on what November 21st, right? That's where she starts saying those were just theories. I don't remember that. It was the train track that like awoke me. No, she knew she was there. They have her on camera for 2 minutes in front of that trash dumpster. She threw poor Misty in it for
Yeah.
Oragel.
Or
Like
Misty.
what a see you next Tuesday to do that to her. Never even gave the gas can back. But anyways, I digress. I'm stuck on this fact that like Leilani put herself there. And so that trash dumpster alone mapped back to waste management and the cell lot that they found Quinton. So I'm sorry, without her saying I did it, she's saying she did it.
Well, and I agree. That's what I'm saying. I think they proved she disposed his body. I think they absolutely proved that. I know she did it. Like, so I'm not saying, I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here and try to see it, because I know there are lots of people who do not agree. And I've seen today a lot of people saying, I don't know, I don't think they prove. So I'm here to have that conversation because, yeah, and the jury's made up of 7 women, 5 men. And Chris says, I don't want to sound like a horrible person. I think we are overthinking it. The jury looked like simpletons. I didn't see them, but never judge somebody by how they look. You'd be surprised. Well, and I agree, but it's not supposed to cut, like, just think about closing statements and how they went through what it is. If there's even that, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. If we go by separating emotions and what did the evidence prove, the evidence has to prove she committed malice murder beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I just don't want people thinking I'm over here thinking she didn't do it. I know she did it. I know it wasn't an accident, but what are the jury going to walk away? Are they going to be confident saying, yep, prosecution proved that, because we got a lot of answers, and in some ways, as far as what happened to Quinton, which is heartbreaking in itself, is his truth is never going to be known. That is horrific. You guys know that that's one big thing I'm always saying, is in order for justice to occur, you have to know what happened to them. I think it's really sad when their story isn't known, despite how horrible that story is. It deserves to be known because it's what happened. And I'm just nervous that that's going to play a big role of, okay, yeah, she disposed of him. Yeah, she did that. But
So say
can
she
we
did
prove it?
dispose of him
Yeah,
and they have her back there. Okay, let's think this out. Because like I am all for hearing everything.
yeah,
If she knew these charges were coming on her and it was an accident, it was time to come clean and get lesser of charges. Don't you think she would have already done that by now?
depends, you know. And again, that's taking into account her behavior. We're not supposed to do that when it comes down to a jury, like, right, let's pretend we're on the jury right now. It's supposed to come down to, did prosecution prove that happened, and not about, well, hey, she would have said this by now, you know what I mean? So I'm just trying to look at it through a jury's lenses over here, and the only thing I could think of is the brain matter. And yes, accidents can happen where I guess that's possible, but I think that's going to be a big factor in their decision making.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm having a hard time
How
thinking of an accident that would happen that would go to that much length and all the lies. Like, I don't know.
I wish we had better audio of those interviews, because maybe there's something within there, because I couldn't hear 85% of all those interviews. And maybe there's something in there that would make me feel more confident.
So what?
I
Okay.
hope.
So what about this thing? Okay, just these little tidbits. Like I just want to throw this out there. This was one thing that kind of caught me off guard. She's talking to Agent Sullivan first day and discusses getting a tattoo in honor of Quinton.
Yeah.
Then brought back in with Agent Solomon on maybe the 12th or something when she did an interview with her. And they bring up the tattoo again, that they had talked about that. And she's talking about it then. She didn't talk about getting a tattoo for the other kids. But on the 5th, she's already talking about an honorary tattoo. I guess I'm just like, I think it would be a very rare circumstance that there's an accident at home, somebody freaks out and discards the body. Um, I don't know. Maybe I just need to look into the statistics more. I think for me, I'm more presumed to think that there was something more nefarious.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. You know, that tattoo was, wait a second, it was totally Casey Anthony vibes, right? Um, and why would it be in memory of Quinton, day one of his disappearance, right? Of him being missing.
Yeah.
I want to be wrong. I want to believe every juror is gonna have no issue believing it was proven. I just I don't like not feeling confident, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
How long do we have to be on verdict watch for you to feel, oh shit, you know, like, don't, like, how long average in the chat, you know, like, how many hours, how many days before you realize they're not agreeing? Because if it was simple and very straightforward and everyone thinks that, yeah, it's been proven, you wouldn't expect it to take too long. But it's also a very heavy burden to have somebody's life in your hands, you know?
Well, it's 19 charges. I mean, it's a lot to go through, but like you have to address
Yeah.
each one. So, I believe that the jury will do what they need to do to come to either a verdict, and if they don't, then they'll notate those. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of false reporting charges.
Well,
False statements is 14. One false
yep.
reporting a crime, one disposable of body, 2 felony murders, 1 malice murder.
I don't know why they didn't charge her with abuse of the corpse, but and yes, Harlot, they started deliberations this afternoon. So did you notice the tactic, and at least in my opinion, that defense used during closing statements? Defense, I don't know if anybody else noticed this. So they went through essentially the charges. And while Lord Farquaad was going through the charges, he was going through basically what you need to meet in order to give a guilty verdict for malice murder, for disposal of a body. As he was getting to certain charges, he was dismissing them in a way where he was essentially saying, I don't even care if you convict her. But I think that was a tactic, basically saying, I'm not going to argue those. You could put guilty for those, but these not guilty. Like, kind of, it felt like reasoning. It felt like, I'll give you, yeah, go ahead, put guilty. I won't argue the drug thing. He literally said, I don't care. Oh, it's the same Oragel, same false statement, whatever. And it was making me feel like you're trying to get the jurors to feel okay writing guilty for those and not guilty for the main ones. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know how anyone else took it, but that's how I took it.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't love the closing statement of defense. I mean, I don't
No.
go into every case like pro prosecution or pro defense. Like, I just kind of go where the evidence takes me, and I just I don't know how I really felt about that one. Did you listen to the judge's instructions to the jury, though,
No,
explaining
I
those
missed
charges?
that.
She explained malice murder so well that I think it may kind of open your eyes a little bit, because I think a lot of people are stuck on malice, and she explains what it would qualify, and it really, I think it helps. I'm not trying to sway you one way or another, but I even had questions too. I wanted to know, like, of course, like, I am one that believes Leilani did this, and I want her to do time for this, but I would want it to be, properly, adjudicated by, her peers. And I'm not on that jury. You know what I mean? So I just think the judge did a really good job of explaining the counts.
How'd she explain malice murder?
Oh Lord, girl.
In
Hold
a
on.
nutshell. In a nutshell.
You're putting me on the spot. Hold on.
Oh,
Let me
it's
go
okay.
grab it. 1 second.
And not a mess like with the screaming. I know Leilani, the histrionics, man, but I don't know who said it. I don't know if it was even in the trial or on the panel that I was watching, but no, it was Gavel. It was Gavel saying from the behavior panel, basically an organism will do what worked for it in the past. And so when you're watching Leilani scream over the top, the hysterical, that is what has worked for her in the past. And so that's what she's going to do now. And I thought the same is true with Letitia, right? That over the top insane lines, yet she's gotten away with it. And so that's what they're going to opt to do now. Yeah, JD Wells, that's how I took it. I just want justice for this baby. I just want, and the way that she was eating nonstop, and I know that she's been locked up and the food may not be great, even though her body says otherwise. She has been doing nothing but popping food or mints and licking her greasy ass fingers, smirking. I'm sorry, even on the day that his remains are being shown, you are eating. Everybody else isn't. You are eating in the courtroom. And we're not talking about one time, let me pop a Nutri-Grain bar in my, like, I'm talking about every damn time that camera pans to her, she is stuffing something in that hole. Every time. That's what I'm saying, ATS. So you should be the most distraught. And that is what's the most telling to me of it was not an accident. Not that I thought it was an accident to begin with, but I observed behavior, right? And your behavior screams it wasn't an accident. It was not an accident, because if it was, I would still expect that distraught, that you're a mess, that looking at she wasn't fazed when his partial remains. He was a bag of bones. That's all that was left of him. And nothing. Hey, B Crumbs. Yeah, and right. She referred to Quinton as smelly shrimp pasta. Like, it. I truly believe that they found Quinton in that landfill so there can be justice in this case. I wholeheartedly believe it. I hope. And when I, like, I don't feel this way. I don't think that I'm just concerned. I'm really, really concerned. I'm scared. I felt this way going back 2 years. I remember having the same conversation with Allie, saying, I really hope they have something. I really hope they have something that can prove what she did. And after watching the trial play out, I've been like, did they have that smoking gun for malice murder? And I'm scared that they didn't. And I'm only scared because I want this baby to have justice. Right. It was a divine intervention that Quinton's remains were found. And not even all of his remains. Not all of his remains. Like, welcome back.
I'm back. Okay. So I went to a news station to get this. And here's the timestamp in back chat. This is just as she picks up on describing malice murder. I thought it just may help a little bit.
Okay. And 69% of the chat believes that prosecution did prove malice murder. 15% says they didn't, and 15% says unsure. So that's where it landed in the poll, guys.
Interesting.
So let's just real quickly listen to how the judge explains the charge of malice murder, and then we got to talk about Delphi, because there's a lot, and we're going to be having a soul live on Delphi, but I've just been catching up over the course of the past couple of days, and I can't hold in what I have learned so far. We need to talk. I have a lot to say, and so we're getting there. All right. So real quickly, this is the jury instructions. This is the judge explaining the charge of malice murder.
That the defendant, 1, caused the death of another person, 2, unlawfully, and 3, with malice aforethought. The killing must have been done with malice to be murder. Malice is a term used here is not necessarily ill will or hatred. Rather, it is the unlawful intent to kill. You may find malice when the circumstances show that the defendant acted with a deliberate intention to unlawfully take the life of another person. You may also find malice when there does not appear to be significant provocation and all the circumstances of the killing show an abandoned and malignant heart. The state does not have to prove premeditation to prove murder. If a killing is done with malice, it is murder, regardless of how briefly the malicious intent existed. No specific length of time is required for malice to rise in the defendant's mind. Malice may be formed in a moment, and instantly a fatal wound would be inflicted. If malice was in the defendant's mind at the time of the act or the killing, and move the defendant to do it, that is enough for the killing to be murder. Malice. Malice may be expressed or implied or both. You may find express malice when the circumstances show that the defendant acted with the deliberate intention to unlawfully take the life of another person. You may imply malice when there does not appear to be a significant provocation and all the circumstances of the killing show an abandoned and malignant heart. Motive. The state does not have to prove motive to prove murder. Any evidence of motive has been admitted for your use in determining the defendant's state of mind at the time of the killing. Felony murder. For felony.
Okay. All right. That was helpful, Shay. I
Kind of softens it a little bit, right?
Yeah. And I was watching Leilani's face like, like she's probably reading through this. Hey, Lee, she's probably reading through this like, can they get me? Can they get me? But she, even on the stand when she was asked, do you want to test? She's smirking.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where me and Shay were a little red, but I've spent the last 2 days catching up, and that's why I'm like, oh my God, we need to talk. We need to talk because, all right, let's do a little transition here.
I can usually only do one case at a time, just so you guys know. I'm ADHD,
And
so I've
we're
been so
three.
yes.
We've had Boone, we've had Simon, and then Delphi. And I was only focusing on Simon and Boone, okay? But then 2 days ago, I was like, all right, what's going on with Delphi? And I was like, I don't like it. I don't like it. Now, again, like I said at the beginning of this live, I'm not presenting a bunch of like, here's A through Z, how it happened. I can't. I've been focusing on other stuff, but I want to talk to you about the things that I've learned that have stood out in my mind so far as a conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm like, whew, all right, where should I start? So,
are you starting like from jury to sequester or what?
I'm just talking about what I've learned. Like, basically, I've been watching a couple of people who are there, right? Hidden True Crime, Andrea, and keeping up with like Sleuthy's Twitter. And what I'm hearing is very concerning. As far as I'm understanding, today was essentially the first day Richard Allen's name was even mentioned by the prosecution. Now, can they be going in a chronological order? Can they be going in, like, let us lay this out for you, how it unfolded for us? Sure. But I was very concerned up until today when I was like, what do you mean prosecution hasn't, like, there was an entire day where they don't even think Richard Allen's name was mentioned once. And I was like, what? That's crazy. But so far, we have a few days. Today was day 6, and the crime scene photos were shown. The autopsy photos were shown with the medical examiner who got up in the stand. And we're going to go through that because Hidden True Crime, she has a friend in the courtroom who's also a sketch artist, and she did these sketches of the autopsy photos in such a very respectable way, but also very I appreciate it because it's showing us what they're viewing with the autopsy photos, but in a way that it's classy and as I don't know what word to use. It was just, it's showing us the information. Yeah. So everything kind of came around this bullet, right? The only thing that's linking Richard Allen so far is this unspent bullet. But apparently, it was between Abby and Libby. And it was not even anywhere noticeable. You couldn't even see it by eye. It took a light for it to for them to even notice it. Okay. Now,
And there's not crime scene photos of it either.
Right. No photo was taken. No, nothing was taken with this bullet. Okay. The only thing that leads some credence to it is the fact that it was recovered well before Richard Allen was even part of the picture. To the, well, you know, they knew he was there, but like whether before his name came up to where you can't kind of turn around and be like, oh, well, it was planted there. I guess you can, but like it was already in evidence. So we know that, you know, it seems like Libby took the brunt of the injuries. Whether from what Hidden True Crime, her name's Lauren, right? So the way Lauren explained it was this was a very up close and personal, like as we already would know, it was a very up close and personal killing, but it seemed like Libby was targeted. Now, when she says targeted, she doesn't necessarily mean that it's someone who had to have known her and targeted and it was a whole planned out thing versus the injuries, the difference of injuries, and I'll pull up the sketches for you guys. The difference of injuries between Abby and Libby were substantial. We know that Abby was redressed in Libby's clothes, but Abby had one cut to her throat on one side, versus Libby, who had numerous cuts to her throat, and as we know that she was naked at the time that she was found. And one of the also things that stood out through the medical examiner was the way that Lauren explained it is Abby had these two red lines of markings on her face that went from her cheek like to her chin, to where the medical examiner said it could have been a rag and it could have been tape. No tape residue was found, though. No tape residue was found on her. That doesn't mean it wasn't tape. It couldn't have been tape, but no tape residue was found. And I thought that was very interesting, that it was on the left side, two pink lines going down, but it didn't seem to cover her mouth. What do you think? Did you hear about that, Shay? What are your thoughts with that?
I'm processing a lot of that still because I, okay, so back up to one of them had before all this came out, one of them had hair in their hands.
Yes.
With a follicle still on it. That was surprising to me. That goes back to like finding the crime scene, right? Um, that's still kind of shocking. I think it was like what Libby's pants seemed damp at the
Yes.
bottom is what I was reading too. So just
And
trying to tie
Abby's
this all in.
clothes were still damp at the time of the autopsy.
Yes. I really do struggle with this one because I'll be honest with you, when I heard they made an arrest, I've followed Delphi since a day one kind of person myself. I was like, oh great, justice for the girls. But once the big docket got released before the big Frank's motion and the Odinism theory came out, I um yeah, once that was released, I had a lot of doubts, and I still do have a lot of doubts. And that was the first time in the Frank's motion that I really got to read about the crime scene through legal documents, because a lot of what has been talked about has been through Reddit, and what they say were searchers that took pictures or did statements throughout, Reddit and wherever it may be for all these years. So I mean, I'm processing what you're saying about the way it's going in court, because I really was kind of stuck on like what the Frank's motion had said. This is putting a little bit more into it, but again, I don't need to see those photos. Like, I understand they're minors, but I do have a really big problem that we can't hear anything at all, because I don't know how
Yes.
to like fully have an opinion based on somebody else's interpretation.
Yes. Everybody interprets things differently. everybody. And we're supposed to rely on, they're only allowing 20 people from the public. That's it. It is not recorded audio nor video, which I agree. Don't need to see the video. But audio is super important. How are we supposed to determine whether or not, and I know it's not our job to determine Richard Allen's guilt or innocence, but not to have that transparency, not to know what's going on in the courtroom. And especially when we're finding out there's hours worth of interviews that poof are gone.
And what, according to was it Andrea Burkhart, like there's 30 seats that 10 go to Abby's family, 10 go to Libby's family, 10 go to Richard Allen's family. I know Kathy Allen, Richard's wife, has reserved a seat for Bob Mata of
Yes.
Defense Diaries. There is a very small amount left for traditional media, independent journalists, and the public. And so, the court is supposed to be for the public. And it just seems like it's very limited to even that community to be able to see the justice system play out for the deaths of Abby and Libby. And I don't think there's true justice unless she got the right person. And at this point, I
Right.
haven't been convinced it's Richard.
And so let me pull up the sketches first and we'll talk about a little bit about the injuries, but then I want to talk to you about this video and this missing photo and Richard Allen's alleged statement when he was asked if he's bridge guy. Okay. But I just want to give you guys a little bit of a trigger warning. This is us. These are sketches. Okay. So again, this is Lauren from Hidden True Crime. Shout out. She's been coming out during lunch and giving lunch, lives, what's been happening in the morning and then going on every single night. She camps out every single night just to get this seat. Her friend in the room with her in the courtroom is a sketch artist. And so when the medical examiner was up on the stand and they were going through autopsy photos, she did these illustrations, these sketches of what they were seeing. They are done in a very respectful way, but it gives us insight into what they were seeing and the injuries with the girls. So I'm going to pull those up now just for anybody who needs to be warned. But I want to talk about the difference with the injuries here. So this is with Abby. So again, they did sexual assault kits, okay? There is no trauma or signs that indicate sexual assault occurred. Now, with that being said, that does not mean sexual assault did not occur. It just means that there's no injuries or trauma that they can confirm it occurred. With that being said, there was a moment in time that Abby was naked because she is wearing Libby's clothes and there was dirt and leaves on her back, okay, underneath the clothes that she was wearing. And Libby, as we know, was naked. So it seems like there is an element at play here, just unsure to what extent is going on. Go ahead.
Is she trying to say liver mortis?
No, it's called lighter mortis, and I thought I would have thought the same thing if I didn't hear her explain it.
Okay.
So lighter
Sorry.
mortis. No, you're fine because I would have thought the same thing. Lighter mortis, and let me get the actual definition before I botch it. So we know liver mortis is also known as postpartum lividity, a postmortem sign of death that refers to the discoloration of the skin after death. But lighter mortis is, where is it? Why isn't it popping up? Well, it's not popping up, but I know I heard her specifically say lighter mortis because I was like, what's that,
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you, Pink. That's really sweet. Thank you so much, Pink.
I think it's still liver mortis. Well, that's what
I know when she said it, I was like, lighter more. That's why I was like, it didn't. I don't. I don't know. I now nothing's popping up, so I don't know if maybe it was just a mistake.
maybe.
But I know I heard her say lighter mortis because I was like, I've never heard of that before. Thank you, Lucia, for 16 months, hon.
Does she still describe it as the blood that would pool in the body after death?
I honestly don't even remember now. I just remember hearing the way she said it, and I was like, oh, that's weird, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Well, we
I
do
heard
know.
that the audio is very hard, the acoustics in
Yes.
that courtroom, because I know like there's so much to talk about. Even the 43-second video, the enhancements are so much F shit going on right now.
So Wade admitted, if you're referring to Diane, Wade did admit, ask Tess, she'll explain it. A lot of people didn't even realize that. But no, a rape kit doesn't just consist of sperm. It consists of an examination looking for signs of penetration, fingernail clippings underneath the fingernail, like it consists of more than just is there or is there not sperm.
Right.
Right. Small tears, trauma, obvious signs that intercourse had occurred within, X amount of time. So it says lighter mortis. This would be Abby. And the little markings here show debris. So, like I said, we know that Abby as well at one point. She did say, okay, so then I guess maybe the sketch artist just wrote lighter instead of liver. But you know what? To be fair, again, they're in the courtroom and just think about Leilani's trial, right? How quick the photos go up and down. We're relying, like on them to sketch it out so quickly. And I could never even sketch something like you'll see Lauren's sketch at one point, like that's what my sketch would look like. Maybe she was so quickly writing it down, she wrote a D instead of a V. Honest mistake, if so.
Yeah, but I think we catch the drift because even in the little side like comments and the way she has it, that right there is an indicator. That red is the blood pooling from her body, the gravity.
Yes, thank you. And Marcel, to be fair, you don't think it leaves signs that intercourse had occurred. It not all the time, but it absolutely can. So we know that Abby at one point was naked. Her clothes were found in the stream, and she was wearing Libby's clothes. So she was naked at one point, and even more so, they believe that she was at least on that ground at one point naked because there is debris and dirt that was on her back underneath the clothes. So Abby also had the red marking. So everywhere you see, it's a red marking where the clothing, so again, we're dealing with liver mortis. So depending on where the clothing is gathered and stuff, the blood will pool at the bottom of her back. And it says places where it's pinkish and red is where there was pressure between the part of her body and the ground. And you have to remember they weren't found until the next day. So it is lighter, refers to lividity. I'm curious why when I literally type in lighter mortis, why it wouldn't come up in Google. It's Google, that's what's throwing me off. But I think we all understand it's in reference at least to liver mortis.
Okay. And didn't the medical examiner estimate that they had been dead like what, 41 hours? I can't remember how much it was.
As far as I understood, they could not determine a time of death. Unless you're talking about from when the autopsy occurred.
Yeah, I've been trying to, it's so hard to keep up with this because you're looking at a collective full of notes from journalists, and I'm having a hard time because I feel like there's like a very different tone and some of the way the evidence being presented and interpreted through traditional media versus independent journalists.
Right.
Because like some of those news stations, they had on record what the first week that they did have DNA and it was
Yes.
state troopers, and then that all got like removed. And I mean, I still had some clips of that saved somewhere, but I have so many questions here. This is just wild.
And wait until we get to the transcript of the video. Like I have Shay, I'm like jumping at the bit here because I have so many more questions right now than answers. I really do. And I do find it very peculiar that Abby was wearing Libby's clothes. The only thing I could think of, they were the same, the girls were the same height, but he was bigger than Abby, that the killer initially dressed Abby, and especially if the clothes were damp, it would have been a lot easier to dress her in a bigger outfit than it would be to dress her even in her size outfit if she was wet and then trying to put it on somebody without movement, like it would be very hard. And they may have given up and just screw it. Like maybe they didn't realize it was the wrong outfit at first and was like, oh, I'm not going to take the time to switch it all, and then dumped her clothes. But then when again we're about to go through the difference of the injuries, and it really makes you think, no, there's something, there's a bigger reason of why Libby was left the way she was left versus Abby. Do you have a thought of that?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on it. Hold on one second. Sorry, I got a little kiddo. I'll be right back. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Why spend the time to put the clothes back on? And that's what I'm saying. Unless they were looking specifically to humiliate Libby, I don't understand. I don't understand how this could have happened in broad daylight with everybody around. I don't understand. So with Abby, her injury was about a 2.5 inch wound, and it was to the left of her neck. Okay. It says that this is the blood from pulling off the hoodie. So there was blood seen underneath the clothes she was wearing. This is when they removed the clothes. Okay. She was wearing 2 bras. So this part is like the first bra she was wearing, and then when they took off that bra, it's the second, just for clarification. But there were superficial wounds, one on her top lip, one below the actual wound to her neck. This is what the wound looked like as is, but the medical examiner ended up stretching it just to measure it and see what the length was, and it was 2.5 inches. This, the medical examiner says that it would have took between 5 to 10 minutes for these girls to bleed out, which it's way too long. Way too long. Are you back, Shay?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Did you want to give us your theory regarding the changing of the clothes? You don't have to.
I don't really have a strong theory on the changing of the clothes. But I do like to the traditional definition of staging the body. That is more something that I kind of lean towards. I'm just that's ever discounted the Odinism theory. Not that it was like a sacrifice, but maybe somebody who wanted to cover it up to make it look like that, or they were aware of those practices and beliefs. I don't know. I've had a really hard time wrapping my head around like one person be able to do this in broad daylight in such a short time? Because according to like what we know, like Richard Allen had to go to work or something after this and wasn't there very long. So that just kind of perplexes me.
Yeah.
I just didn't think he had the time for one person. He was a small man. Um,
Yeah,
I
Richard Allen is 5'4", the same height as the girls.
Yeah, and one thing too that is interesting is like there was a lot of talk about how there wasn't up until this there wasn't a lot of blood at the scene, but I heard in court they made it seem like that. So that's where I'm a little perplexed.
Right.
That theory and the dampened pants. Um, I guess I kind of was thinking that maybe they went somewhere else because you know Libby's cell phone stopped working at a certain time, and then they gave some reasoning that it just turned back on after it died.
Yes.
That was weird. Like, I
Yes.
can't get over it. Like, that was like very, very, very odd to me. An
They couldn't give a
explanation.
reason why it randomly turned on and these messages went through. They couldn't tell us.
Yeah. And then also, like, what we have known to be, they call Bridge Guy, like, is that just somebody that police yes did this crime? Because from what I'm understanding and the way it's been reported and the video fully being shown without
Mhm.
enhancements, which AI would bot in there or they would pixelate, then you really can't fully detect it. And there's a lot of other trials, and one more recently that is known to me specifically, like Kyle Rittenhouse, they did not allow enhanced audio or video in court. It had to be in its true state. And so the other thing too with the sketches, like they're not allowing the sketches in, but that's who everybody told you to look for.
Yes.
So I guess I'm
Exactly.
just kind of lost in a lot of the sauce right now. Like I feel like everything you've been told is a lie, and they want you to just believe this bullet and these confessions of a man who was held in prison
Eating his own
confinement, which he should have
feces,
never been in.
eating his own feces, eating court documents. And when I say that, I'm not saying Richard is not guilty. All I'm saying is that something's not sitting right with me, and we're going to continue to talk about it. And I want to hear
Well,
everyone's thoughts.
and he confesses to killing his own family and his unborn grandchildren. Like,
Yeah,
this is just really, really off. It just stinks to high heaven, and I don't like it. I feel like everything's being done in the dark, and from Judge Gold trying to remove the defense lawyers to not letting the Odinism theory in, which is one of the things the investigators were
they were
first
looking
looking
at day
into.
2. Yep.
Yes, like what is really going on here? And it's sad because I don't even think that they really know. And I feel for Abby and Libby's family. I know they want justice so
I
bad.
know. I know. And Richard Allen's family has been in the courtroom every single day, and his wife is there. And the way that she explained it was she is learning all of this information in real time with the public, and she is there to try to get answers and understand also, which I respect that. I respect that, you know. But oh, here, drop the link, you silly boot. She's so stubborn. Nightbot will
What?
drop Nay's link. So yeah, it said like power mode I'll pull it up because I grabbed the screenshot. Oh, or maybe it was in the article. I remember seeing it. I have it somewhere. Um, but we'll get into that next. So this is the sketch regarding Libby. And as you could already see, there's a lot more going on. So
Right.
apparently, like Shay said, in this courtroom, the acoustics are very poor. It's a beautiful courtroom. It's one of like an original courtroom. But if you're not the jury and right there, if you're sitting a couple rows back, you're really gonna struggle to hear anything. So the medical examiner apparently spoke very softly, very quietly. So, yes, they had to move around and exchange notes and things like that. But with Libby, like again, Abby had the one slash to the left of her neck. Then with Libby, the way that the medical examiner, she had multiple cuts to her throat, but the way that the medical examiner explained is that it was not just one cut, it was as if they went twice. That there is areas where it looks, there's like skin tags, and it would look like to be serrated, but not necessarily from a serrated knife, versus the second time around, I guess. Yeah, thank you. Multiple passovers. And when it goes over multiple times, I guess it creates a certain effect in the skin. So with this, it shows there are 2 slashes, almost like an X. It shows paper bags on her hands to preserve the evidence. There are superficial wounds, like near her collarbone area. There is a wound under her chin, as if her chin is up, like her head is back. It says that this cut is not as jagged on this side. The center says this could be 2 slash wounds, hence the estimated length is 4 to 5 stabs. I'm sorry, not the estimated length. The estimate is 4 to 5 stabs. And the chin is up and the head is back. And this was a marking not made from the blade, but maybe from the handle of a steak knife or a box cutter. Now, this box cutter became a real big issue. And the defense was making a big stink because they're like, this is the first time you're mentioning a box cutter. You've never once mentioned a box cutter. Like, why didn't you do the appropriate motions? And the medical examiner's like, because I didn't change anything. Essentially, he was recently like working in his garage or something like that, and there's been speculation that 2 different knives were used, but over the course of looking at his box cutter while doing work in the garage, he realized, well, hey, this box cutter could actually make these wounds depending on what side you're using, how you're using it. And so that's just my theory, but it doesn't change anything as far as my report goes. And so again, we're sitting here and we knew that this was already going to be horrific, but to see such differences between the 2 girls, and then to know one was left naked and the other not, I struggled to go with my theory of maybe he quickly dressed Abby. It's a lot easier to dress in the bigger clothes, and then ran out of time. When I look at these injuries and the differences, and Libby also had blood on her left and right hand, what would make the most sense is you go to grab and apply pressure to whatever wound is bleeding, and that might be how that blood got on both her left and right hand. And like it shows, her head was lifted back, and so it's hard to not go with Libby was targeted, maybe in the sense that she witnessed something happen to Abby first and she fought and she ran. What do you think, Shay?
Um, what do I think on why she would have more stab wounds, or like the severity?
Everything. Do you think Libby was targeted over Abby? Do you think it would have been circumstances that led to her getting the brunt? Do you correlate being left naked versus Abby being left naked as part of maybe being targeted? What's your overall feelings on it?
Mm. I'm gonna be the you're not gonna like me right now. I
I want
don't.
different theory. I want to hear it.
I just don't really have a conclusion on that standpoint. I think
Yeah.
I am so stuck on the fact of all of the other evidence not making sense to Richard Allen that like I want to push it outward. And I guess I just feel like this may have been more than one individual. Not to say that one person can't control two people. That has happened before. There's been a survivor in a best friend situation. I recall following a case on that, where the best friend passed away, the other one was able to escape. They were held at gunpoint and they were both SA'd. Um, so I know that that can happen of the control from one person, but I think that the way the wounds are, the what this looks like would take time, in my opinion. It would be hard for me to think this happened daylight. Um, and I guess I would want to know were the clothes put on Abby post mortem? Like,
It
because
appears
that's a
that
big
way.
question to me.
It appears that way only because that debris and dirt was found on her back, remember? So she was laying there at one time without clothes on. Now, yes, we could argue she may not have been deceased at that point,
Mhm.
but it's a logical conclusion, I feel like, to believe she may have been. This is a hard one, Shay. I'm
I am going to reserve my comments on a target because I want to respect the families,
yeah.
and my thoughts kind of would dwindle more to opening up that aspect because I can't think in my mind at the age of these girls what would put them as a target unless there was a kinship of some sort that made them a target. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's just my initial thought.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And I don't think it's the family's fault if even if that were the case, unfortunately. That's why I don't want to go there at all. Like oh, I don't know,
Um,
it's tough. The
it's
only thing
really tough.
the only thing I could think of, would there be more wound marks on Libby because the person got exhausted after Abby? I don't know.
Maybe I was thinking, did she fight? Like not saying that Abby wouldn't have, versus depending on how the situation played out, right? One most likely was
Right.
injured first. That's logical to think. And the second, if it was Libby, would make sense, right? That, oh my God, and you would freak out and you would fight. It's the whole idea of how did, and that's going to circle around into this infamous video, right? How did this one man allegedly subdue these two girls? Not saying it's not possible, it absolutely is, but this video isn't all it appeared to be originally. Another thing that's just not sitting right with me.
Did they state if there was defensive wounds on the girls?
There were no defensive wounds, Shay. There were no defensive wounds.
Huh.
I know. Um, which it just makes you wonder how this all played out. How did this all play out? Um
Yeah.
Now,
Like I said, I
mhm,
followed this for a long time, and a lot of what I know is based on what court documents up right until trial, and I know a lot's come out since then. So it's kind of difficult to like take in the new information as you're telling me because some of it is new. I have read some things online, but it's one thing to just sit here and like kind of hypothesize about it and try to as well be respectful. But I don't know. I kind of am still a little stuck on the other evidence around this case with the phone shutting on and off. Like, I tend to wonder if the girls met up with somebody. I think that is one reason why when Keegan Klein came out, with the Anthony Shots profile, I'm not saying it's Keegan Klein by any means.
I've
I
seen
think there's a
a
lot of
lot of
people that
people
held on to
mentioning
that.
it. Yeah, a lot of people are. I would love to do a night specifically on the topic of Delphi, but I didn't get into all the Keegan Klein stuff. But for maybe people who aren't familiar, for you to explain all of that whole rabbit hole, because I see so many people still dropping that name like actively when I go into the live chats on the lunch break, and it's Keegan Klein, Keegan Klein, Keegan Klein.
Yeah, so like allegedly the girls the night before were even talking with a few of their friends that they were planning on going out to the Mononhide Bridge. But it didn't sound like it was beknownst to the family until the day of, whenever Libby's sister took them there. So they, when going through the evidence, they connected Libby talking to the Anthony Shots account, which ended up being connected to Keegan Klein, who lived with his father. There's a lot of dark stuff. Anthony Shots is a model face that they used to disguise themselves and talk to young girls, but they're saying that Keegan was not involved in it. He's serving time for the other crimes associated with his doings with that account. And
Right.
um this is where I go, is like, okay, so if there's no defensive wounds, I would think that the girls would be willing to go out and meet somebody maybe that they seemingly may trust. And like, that there had been kind of a little bit of a surprise attack of one, maybe the person isn't who they said they were, or I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of questions. I mean,
Well, and that circles into this infamous video. Now, when this video was played for the jury, not yesterday, I think the day before, there was a motion from defense. Not, the way that the media displayed it was that they don't want the video to be shown. That's not what it was. They said that they wanted this Snapchat video to be played in its original format and without anybody saying what they believe is being said on the video. And I wholeheartedly agreed with that, because if you guys remember the whole Yanni, what was the Yanni whatever test, you will hear whatever you're told to hear. It's actually pretty freaky. Like someone will play a sound bit and you'll be like, what did that say? I don't know. And I'll be like, it's at blueberry waffles. And then when you play it again, you only hear blueberry waffles. Yet if they say, all right, now listen, it says white unicorn, all of a sudden you'll hear, the Laurel, Yanni Laurel. Yes, you'll hear white unicorn. So I thought it was completely fair to say, hey, don't tell the jury what is said or you perceive to be said. Let them form their own opinion based on what they hear. I thought that was totally fair. What do you think, Shay?
and again, it goes back to like, I don't believe that there should be altered video or audio evidence submitted to the jury. You should see it in its truest form.
Right.
Because like, if it's going to be a video, when you're trying to enhance it, it adds, pixelation, the audio, like an AI kind of bot type situation. So I do think that it shouldn't have been allowed in that aspect. But it makes you wonder that why was it shown to the public that way? Because it's put it in people's minds that that's what it's supposed to be.
Yes. And when they listened to it in its original format, two things were said. One, where's Bridge Guy? I didn't see Bridge Guy anywhere in this video. And 2, where's Down the Hill? We didn't hear Down the Hill anywhere in this video. And it was only after they returned from lunch that then they were able to show the enhanced video. And Bridge Guy is nowhere near as close to the girls as we originally believed him to be. Apparently, he was only caught on like one frame very far off into the distance, to the point that you couldn't even see or tell by just watching the video in its original format. And the same thing with Down the Hill. And the conversation, and this is part of this, Wish TV's been doing like everyday recaps, which are very good. I could drop the links for them. But it says that Leggett tells the jury about the process of altering the video on Libby's phone. Leggett says the Bridge Guy video was altered to be upright all the time. The prosecution showed the video to the jury again. Leggett describes what he hears in the video in the following way. Abby, is he right here? Don't leave me up here. Libby, this is a path. That be a gun. There's no path here. Then the Bridge Guy says, guys. The girls say, hi. Bridge Guy says, down the hill. Now, again, that's his interpretation of what is being exchanged. But from what Lauren from Hidden True Crime says, that video, that 43-second video, there was no distress. There was, like, the girls were talking for the most part of it. Like, you didn't notice anything was wrong.
And was it the geolocation of where that video was shot in a different location, the bridge, or like I can't remember exactly, but I heard something about the geolocation being off as
I'm
well.
not sure about that. That would be interesting. I know that they testified that there was a path. Basically, all of the leaves and stuff was moved. It was a clear disturbance. That's how they referred to it, as a disturbance. And that is where they're assuming, when they said there's no path here, they must have kind of like sit and scooted and slid down. And that's ultimately what led to the area where their bodies were found. But did they slide down the hill? Like, they were on the complete opposite side of the bridge, kind of away from everyone. But I don't know. Like, I just have so many questions. I have so many questions regarding this. Yeah, she's in the courtroom, Natasha. And so she'll come live on the lunch break and give us a recap in the morning, like, hey, this is what's going on. And then she goes live every night to kind of recap the entire day. I know Andrea Burkhart also is doing great. Sleuthy is doing absolutely amazing on Twitter, just banging that stuff out.
She's a mod for the Defense Diaries, which is Bob Mata that we mentioned.
Yeah.
You got Lawyer Lee there as well. I'm trying to think who else is there. Oh. Hold on one second. I'm going through this because there's so, like, I'm following so many different Twitter ones to be able to keep up. But it sounds like it's a pool of journalists taking notes, exchanging notes. You know, they could have different interpretations of it.
Well, and did you also hear about, there is a photo missing from Abby's phone? Did you hear about that?
Well, I heard they were saying it's a photo, but if it was taken with Snapchat, it wouldn't save to the camera roll.
Yes. And so they asked one of the jury questions, because this is one of the awesome situations where the jury can ask questions, which I love. I think it was one of the jurors who asked, is it possible that the Snapchat was logged in on someone else's phone then? And they said, yes, possible. I think it has all of the jury questions. Okay. So the first witness today, which was a continuation of yesterday, Dr. Roland Kaur, who performed the autopsies on Abby and Libby's body, described the wounds on each girl. He said the girls did not have blatant defensive wounds or sexual trauma. The girls could have been wounded with a box cutter, and this sparked a back and forth with the defense, which argued that Kaur's original report said the girls were wounded with a serrated edge. Allen's attorneys accused Kaur of changing his story without telling them. So the second to testify was Sarah Carbo, who told the court she saw Bridge Guy walking alongside the road covered in mud and blood, but the original interviews she had, which were 3, she referenced mud in the first 2, never mentioned blood until the third one, but she, on a bombshell moment, kind of really on the stand, said there's an hour missing out of this interview because the defense pulled up the transcript and said, where on any of this did you mention blood? And she's like, she was very defensive, apparently. She stuck to her guns and she's like, I always said mud and blood. But then she said there's an hour from this interview missing. And apparently there's days and days worth missing. What do you think of that, Shay? That does not at all feel right. With everything collectively together, what do you mean there is missing interviews?
Yeah, well, when you kind of dive into it a little bit deeper, you find out that some of the interviews that are missing in those days are of some key witnesses that they were looking at in the Odinism theory.
Oh, man.
It's really effed up. That's why I'm like, girl, this is deep rabbit hole. It
It
is
feels
tough.
deep. It feels deep.
Yeah, and Sarah stuck by that, and she was interviewed much later on as well. So, and I think too the 4 different sketches, and I don't know, they all look kind of a little different except for a few,
Yeah, the
like a
2
younger
look
guy.
alike, but not the other 2 at all. Over 50 days total. That's insane. So, and here's the part we were talking about. So Cecil said that the phone was being used by both the girls on the day they disappeared. He told the courts which apps had Libby and Abby's logins. He said the phone was last unlocked around 2:07 p.m. and the Bridge Guy video was taken at 2:13 p.m. At 2:14 p.m., someone tried to unlock the phone with a fingerprint. At 2:32 p.m. is the last known movement of the phone. Libby's phone stayed on and received messages until at least 10:30 p.m. Although it wasn't turned off, it stopped receiving messages until 4:33 a.m. on February 14th. When asked why this happened, Cecil replied, I don't know. When asked if the 23 electronic devices seized from Richard Allen in 2022 connected him to Abby and Libby, Cecil said no. He said that nothing linked Allen to the girls, other than having searched for info about the case. The prosecution pointed out that Allen had a different phone in 2017, not included in the seize. The defense responded that Allen did not have his phone from 2017 in 2022. So, what do you think about her phone all of a sudden going until 4:17 a.m.? And her phone was found underneath her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's strangely suspicious. I always kind of thought that if the phone is said to have died, um, before I thought it was shut off and maybe there was movement. with the girls, and they went to a different area, because I originally didn't think that the area the girls were found was where they were killed.
You said that from when I first started talking to you about it, I remember.
Yeah, and I guess, like, the way it's been kind of conveyed is that there was some blood traces found at the scene, like on the trees and different little things, but it just didn't seem to me like, from what I had heard thus far, and I still haven't seen anything myself, that that could have been a possibility. So I thought the phone could have been turned off to not track it. And then maybe the girls would have been placed back in that area later on. Why later on? Well, I think they would presume that there wouldn't be people still searching for them, because they started searching for these girls rather quickly. And I guess it's just kind of hard for me to believe that throughout the daytime and looking for them, they weren't found that same day.
Right.
And then the phone turning back on, like, that's a question. I mean, that's just a bigger question. That's a big gap. I don't see how a phone just turns automatically back on after dying.
Neither do I. And this is from yesterday, day 5, and it says some highlights regarding a report in 2019 on what he found on Libby's phone. 2 people were using Libby's phone. Many apps had logons for Abby and Libby. Was that logons? I'm sorry, logons for Abby and Libby. There were several fingerprints saved to the phone, including Abby's. The health app on the phone was working in the background and recorded steps taken, changes in elevation, and the distances traveled. Cecil outlined that information for the jurors. Apparently, they changed elevation for 2 flights. The phone also made 2 calls and was plugged into a power source and posted photos to Snapchat on February 13th, 2017. The phone also recorded the bridge guy. So this year, Cecil compiled a second report, including more extensive information from the iPhone using a new program. So at 1:41 p.m. on February 13th, a picture was posted from the phone to Libby's Snapchat account. At 1:43 that same day, another picture was posted to Snapchat. At 2:05 p.m., a picture of the Monon High Bridge was posted to Snapchat. The phone last unlocked at 2:07 p.m., although someone failed to unlock it with a fingerprint about 7 minutes later. That's so creepy to me. Like, it's so eerie. At 2:13 p.m., the bridge guy video is recorded. At 2:14, someone attempts to unlock the phone but fails. The last recorded movement of the phone was at 2:32. The last signal from the phone came at about 10:32 p.m. Cecil reported that he thought that the phone had died. He found no indication that the phone was turned off from 2:13 p.m. to 4:33 a.m., but the phone received calls and texts late into the day on February 13th. At 4:06 p.m., Libby's grandmother texted, "Oh, bless her heart, you need to call me now." The phone stopped receiving notifications late February 13th until 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, when about 20 SMS text message notifications came in. When asked why the phone did not receive the messages between them, Cecil said he did not know. The phone did not have any more activity tracked until it was plugged in the next day by ISP investigator. So why would the phone, and that's a very peculiar nugget to me. Yes, it was laying there without movement, but it stopped working. Like, no messages were going through, no nothing, until 4:13 a.m. And then all of a sudden 20 messages. Why would it do that? What are your thoughts with that, Shay?
It makes no sense to me.
That's a really interesting nugget in my opinion.
Yeah, it literally just it's not sensible to me. I'm sorry. I can't even relate any personal experience for that
I know. I could
could happen.
understand like the failed attempts. Like sometimes I'm not even trying to unlock my phone and I'll be like, like, and I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe I could rationalize a failed attempt if like maybe you're just taking out of your pocket or something. But
Hmm.
knowing what was going on at that same time, I find it eerie.
Yeah.
Um, and I could, okay, spotty service, but it wasn't moved, like, so I guess you could go in and out of. There's something that does, there's a lot of things that don't sit right with me. Here's my fear. These families, oh my God, like bless their heart. I can't imagine what they're going through. Okay. I'm fearful. I'm very fearful. They're going to go through all of this. And what if he's not the right guy? Could you imagine? Can you imagine? Like, and I
I
hope this isn't a botched investigation. I really fucking don't.
I mean, I think there's um there's room for a lot of concern here,
Yeah,
personally speaking. I I feel like from my understanding is that the prosecution is relying on, again, those quote unquote confessions. And again, like that's just wrapped around, in my opinion, a mental state and an environment that Richard Allen should have never been in. He should have been in the county jail awaiting trial, not in prison. Um, and so, like, I guess this whole thing with the unspent bullet, junk science, like, I can't even wrap my head around that. Like, apparently, like, they even tried to test and fire a bullet through his gun and like, oh, look, it matches. No, it
really.
wouldn't if it, yeah, it wouldn't match if it's unspent. They're saying it never went through the
It would never
chamber.
be through, right?
And a lot of people can have that style of gun for one, and his DNA has not been found on any of the girls ever,
How?
even through the testing of the assay kits to body everything. Like none of it makes sense. Like technologically speaking, they can't find a trace of Libby and Abby on any of his phones. Um, he went to, I understand that people will insert themselves in investigation, but he went to law enforcement immediately and said he was out there.
He did.
um they entered it into the system differently. They said that he was cleared.
They did.
I I think there's just other nefarious reasons of maybe why he was picked. I think he's kind of the fall guy, and that's just my opinion. I do think it's a botched investigation when you lose a lot of recording of potential witnesses.
Yes.
One being, Abby's boyfriend's dad, which is BH is like his initials. And the whole group that surrounds kind of the Odinism thing, he seemed to have lied in some of his testimony, saying he didn't even know who Abby was, and but like his son lived with him, and then later admitted he did kind of know who she was. There's just a lot of weird stuff around this case and a lot that's missing that I think that because of those gaps and not having that critical information, it leaves more room for reasonable doubt. And I just can't get behind this unspent bullet thing, no DNA. And I'm sorry, but I can't look at a confession if somebody had seen medical treatment and once the defense gets their experts on the stand, I suspect that they're going to talk to that significantly and what he had gone through. Like, I don't know how you can ride your whole case on those two things at this moment.
And as Dakota girl, an unspent bullet means that it didn't go through the chamber, like it wasn't used. It didn't. I don't know how to. I'm not a gun person. It didn't.
It
Not
it it
deploy,
it,
but
it yeah, it ejected. It didn't go through the chamber.
right. So it's still not used. Which
No
why?
striations through the barrel. So whenever they go to test the gun and they're shooting it, they would try to compare it through a bullet that had striations that went through a barrel. But that's not how that would go. And to say that when they went to collect the evidence, they didn't take pictures of the
Anti-powder.
bullet, or they left the branches there too that were
And
on
they left
top of
the
the
branches.
girls.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Something again, like we know that these branches, which were more like tree limbs, okay, were placed, and this was a huge controversial subject, methodically over the girls. Some people believe that he was trying to cover up the bodies. Other people believe it was in a very more like a sacrificial killing type of way. Now,
Yeah.
something that Lauren from Hidden True Crime explained was something she did know was that, again, they were told it was like, branches. These were huge, like extending longer than, some of them extending longer than the girl's body. But both of the girls, and I did find this very interesting, Shay, both of the girls had their injuries covered with a branch. Both had it placing directly over like their neck area where the injuries weren't so much visible because they were behind the branch. That's interesting to me. That's interesting. But the branches were not collected. You're telling me, and there was blood on the tree, the infamous F, right?
Right.
And it was about 4 feet up. And I just want to say you were correct, Shay, because it says here, Core estimated that the girls died approximately 41 hours before the autopsy. I just remember when they asked, do you have a time of death? They were like, no. But I guess with the medical examiner, he was able to estimate 41 hours at least prior to the autopsy. So yes, you were correct.
Okay.
But how weren't these branches that were placed, that the killer had to touch, that were placed over these girls, how were they had to go back days later and retrieve it?
Yeah. That's a big question I've had for a long time. Why would you not take that first?
I don't know, man.
And why wasn't there further testing done on the hair, like found in the hand, like sooner on? That's just another one that completely perplexes me.
So there is a hair, including the follicle. So not just a hair that would fall out, a hair that included the root, like the follicle part, as if you pull it out, pluck it out, that little piece that comes from the scalp, wrapped in a victim's hand that is not Richard Allen's. Whose is that?
Yeah, they
How
could have
did
done
it get there?
mitochondrial testing on that earlier on.
Shay, we have a potential innocent man, which again, I'm not saying he's innocent, but he's innocent until proven guilty, right? We have a potential innocent man on trial for horrific crimes. And we have these two innocent victims, these two girls and their families who this has been years and years. What has it been? 7 years now?
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't have the right guy? I don't know what would be worse. Not like, and I don't know. I can't speak on it, but I'm trying to imagine what would be worse, to go through not finding the killer as the family, or to go through all of this, the trial and everything, for it to not be the right guy. I don't know what is worse, but I just send prayers to these families. They're in that courtroom every day supporting one another. Richard Allen's family is there supporting him, and something doesn't feel right. It does not feel right. And Judge Gull, and Shay can talk to you all day about Judge Gull and what is allowed, okay? But she is not letting the defense enter in the potential Odinism aspect, which it's a big issue, which it goes back to a sacrificial killing type of deal, and a group that is, in that area. But they started looking into that angle on day 2. I think they have plenty of evidence that would point in that direction within the own investigation. How are you? And so the way that the defense is arguing it when they resubmitted another motion to reconsider is, we have the jury members, right, who they, prosecution's putting forward that the trees and the branches were essentially placed there to try to cover up the bodies, but there are going to be jury members that they don't agree with that after seeing the crime scene photos, and maybe they think there's something more. We have the theory of what that would mean. What do those branches mean? We have an angle, but you're essentially saying we can't give them that answer. We can't give them our theory. We have to keep, and that's not fair. I don't think that's fair at all, Shay.
I don't think it is either. I mean, there's a lot of people that still believe that, although, he's passed of COVID since it, they believe that Ron Logan had something to do with it because the girls were found on his property. I mean, there's
Right.
a lot of questions. It's not just like the Keegan Klein stuff. There's been a lot of other people looked at. I mean, they did, search warrants and look through, him as a possible suspect, and, his lie about where he was at the time, and that changed. And, his girlfriend has come out and spoke about her relationship with Ron. There's a lot of theories around what could have happened. There's um I don't know. I mean, I don't I don't think it's Richard Allen.
Yeah.
I
Listen,
like to be wrong to think they have the right
of
person, but I
course, of
just don't see
course.
the evidence.
And that's what's making it so hard, is not, and I completely agree. I'm not going to say cameras need to be in the courtroom for this. This is such a sensitive, every case is sensitive, but this is very, very sensitive. I could understand not wanting court video in that courtroom, and I wouldn't even, hey, audio, something like Lori Vallow, record it, in real time later on in the night, just release the audio. That's fair. The way that they are not allowing any transparency and relying on the few mainstream media essentially to recap to us what's going on, it's making it even worse. This isn't just one thing that's not sitting right. This is a handful of things that aren't sitting right. And we know it. Why was Richard Allen held the way he was held? That's strange. And did you guys see the recreation of the one of the admissions? Did you see that, Shay?
I don't know. You want to show me?
Yes, I do want to show you. They recreate, because again, they can't they can't they I'm not sure who recreated the I'm sorry, I'm doing two things at once. I'm not sure who
No, okay.
recreated the not that. The where crap, where is it? The false
About what? About what Richard
him
Allen said about?
him him admitting to murdering them.
Okay, yeah,
Look
I
at
heard
this.
that he said he shot them and buried them.
Where did I
That's what
put
I.
it? Where did I put it? Uh
which is not their
Here it
cause
is.
of death.
So, Ruddy, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my God.
Show me.
You're
Sorry.
just like, no, I love that. You're just fucking weird as me. I love it.
Now you
Okay.
got me down on Sleuthy's fuckery
I
spreadsheet because
I have to look at hers.
well, it's gonna follow a lot of the Frank's motion with the Odinism thing, but I mean, there's a lot of things that just are interesting. That's why I do not understand why Judge Gold's not allowing them.
So this is a
Oh, yes.
recreation of one of the admissions of guilt that they have from Richard Allen. Please do not forget, Richard Allen was held in a maximum facility, right? A penitentiary awaiting trial. And he apparently declined severely, physically and mentally, to the point where he was eating his own feces and court documents. Okay. So, yes, we have a couple of different instances of admissions of guilt. I'm really looking forward to when they play that. Recordings, apparently, he admitted to his wife and his family. And this is another admission of guilt. And this is a recreation. This is how it looked. This isn't the original. This is a recreation. But it says Indiana Department of Correction received March 5th, 2023. The name Richard Allen, assignment, dorm, and it says reason for request. And look at the way that it's even written. I am ready to officially, and confess comes here, and 4 is up there. I am ready to officially confess for killing Abby and Libby. And then a signature here. And on the side it says, I hope I get the opportunity to tell the families I'm sorry. This Shay, his mental state at that time is a huge factor, and they had to give him injections of psycho some type of psychiatric medicines. Yeah.
Like something for like a serotonin, like
I forgot the word. Psychotropic. I forgot what it's called. But he didn't, not unwillingly. But they gave him, and every time they did, after like the third one, a few months between, psychotropic. Thank you. Psychotropic injections. And he eventually started getting into a better mental place. And once he did, that is when he was like, wait a second, I didn't do this, so it's really concerning. It's really, really concerning.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, he didn't have a choice. They did it against his will.
And they kept saying that like the county jails like didn't have the security for him. Like he couldn't be in a consolidated confinement there. They had to put him in a prison. I mean, I've never heard of anything like that before.
Neither have I. There's so much, you guys. There's so damn much. I don't even know. Like I said, just 2 days ago, I was like, you know what? What's going on with Delphi? Like, let me take a pause. And I was like, oh my God, like the little bit that I've been hearing. Today was the first time Richard Allen's name essentially is even being brought up from prosecution. This is really concerning. And what I don't think is fair, everyone has the right to a fair trial. Like, come on, they do. And what I don't think is fair is it seems like defense is being extremely limited on how they can fight. And don't forget, these attorneys are doing it pro bono. They were hired counsel, and then they fought to represent Allen on their own, which that spoke volumes to me, Shay. That in itself, it was like not saying, hey, that, I think he's innocent, versus these attorneys were booted off given so much issue, and they're like, we want to represent him. I don't care about the money. I want to do it because it's the right thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to do a live specifically on just Delphi because there's so much, and there's so much to catch up on. I know Duty Ron is live though, and I wanted to hop off and send support over to him. The live stream says, I have cancer and I need your help. It's time to fight. My life depends on it. And so I know that if you guys remember, I had mentioned it a couple of weeks back that he had gotten tested after being exposed to 9/11, the hazards and everything from being a responder. And I don't know if it's from finding out with that testing. But I want to be able for us to all go over there and show him some support before he gets off. So I'm going to drop Duty Ron's link. But this is something that I definitely want to do a full live on with you, Shay, and get into it. There's so much. The rabbit hole is so deep. And I think that the fact that they have no transparency is another tactic of kind of keeping it under the radar. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But what I do know is that these families deserve justice. Those girls deserve justice, but the right person needs to be held accountable. And so I really hope prosecution has evidence because this isn't looking good so far.
Absolutely. I'd like to catch up myself. I'm sorry if I'm not like on the full no and giving you my
There
best
are more.
feedback as well. It's a lot to process coming out of court versus what you've been told for
Yeah.
so long. And that's kind of what I captured from a lot of people that have been following the case for a long time. So maybe those sentiments are shared as well.
Yep. Well, I know I respect that you're like a wait and see. I don't want to speak before I even have all the information, and I get that. And I don't know everything either. I still have to catch up, but I've pretty much caught up with like the last 3 days. And I'm just whoa, whoa. It's a lot.
Yeah. It
So
found
we'll
like I've done some like Twitter thread reading, and then like I think right now I've been listening to Andrea Burkhart, and I'm on jury selection. Like I just kind of going through the full thing and taking it all in. And I like to hear from different people there too, not just
yes,
her. I want to
different
know all the different
perspectives.
perspectives. Yeah.
Yes. Because how one may interpret it in the courtroom, and even you know, Lauren was saying that like how I interpret it isn't necessarily how the person next to me is going to interpret it. And that's so true, and that's why it's a little bit frustrating having to rely on other people's interpretations. But the best we could do, and as far as I know, Sleuthy's compiling basically everybody's notes. Sleuthy is the bomb, ma'am. She's compiling everybody's notes in one place so you could get all perspectives. Shout out to freaking Sleuthy. And so I can't wait to go through that because I think she just dropped it today. So I have to
Yeah.
catch up and go through everything.
I think she's going by witness is what I saw.
Ooh, she's so good. I don't know how she has the time, but she is so good. And I
She's got
saw
a
she
mind
just
for
did Karen
timelines
Reed
too.
too. She does.
Yeah, she started one on Quinton Simon a while back, but I know she followed it, but she's done quite a few timelines, like from Delphi to Karen Reed to Idaho 4. I mean, she's got a knack for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like to use her stuff, even legal analysts and former law enforcement.
Some people just have, like, you have that click for researching. She has that click for timelines. Like, everyone's brain works, like they have a unique way of working. And I don't know. I just don't know how she has the time to do all that because that takes a lot of work, but I have a lot of respect for that.
Me too. But thank you
Uh,
for having me up. I want to run to duty rounds with you and
okay.
see how
Thank you
he's
for coming
doing.
today.
Yes,
She's
thank you.
mostly Lisa, she's mostly on Twitter, but I'll drop her link. It's right here. But thank you so much. Let's go, Jade Reed, over to Duty Ron. Just show him some support. As far as I know, he's just asking for prayers, but I just want to be there. Pop in and send him some well wishes. So I will see you guys all tomorrow after Judy Ron's. Thank you, Shay. You're absolutely amazing. I love you. I love you. I love you. Prayers for all of these families involved. We are on verdict watch, like I said, for Leilani. I didn't really get to talk about Boone today, but that is okay. We'll get into it all this weekend. And yeah, I will see you guys all over there.